chilling tales for dark nights.
To start off with, I now reside in a completely different state after leaving my job with the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando. I used to be what some would describe as a suit. I'm one of the guys that walk around the park in plain sight, yet hidden to the public. I'm part of the elite group of black polo-sporting undercover security officers that specialize in worse things than shoplifters and unruly park guests. You see, if you're at Disney World and you see more than a few guys in one place wearing black polos, then you're most likely in danger, and you should leave the area immediately. The sad part is, we're so good at blending in with the woodwork that you wouldn't even notice us. Anyway, let me cut to the chase here. I've seen some pretty weird things at Disney World during my time. The so-called anomalies that everyone speaks of, well, they're true, but the least of our concerns. See, the thing is, when you take hundreds of thousands of people and cram them into a relatively small space, weird shit is going to happen. We've had kids, adults even, get lost in the park. Cryptozoological sightings, alien sightings, ghost sightings, you name it. We've seen it. Generally speaking, unexplainable things happen all the time. At the height of my time there, I was a senior special security officer and I got called for some pretty dark shit. Many of you imagine we, as in the security detail I was in, were covering up for Disney Corp. But in actuality, we were damage control, and were kept out of the loop on things, and were trained not to question, but to diffuse. There was one thing, though, that still bothers me to this day. One day, a cast member, as the Disney staff are called, rang us on the Nextel to report that a group of 4 children had gone missing on an eerily calming nature ride called Living with the Land. Another one of those anomalies, I figured. The odd thing about the cast member's report was that up until that point, my team and I had never received that particular type of complaint before. Of course, that made no difference. We had protocol to follow. As per usual, we were issued a cover story from higher up and asked to recite it to any witnesses to the events, both cast members and guests alike. Alan, a colleague of mine, recited the official narrative to the cast member who had called in the incident. Calmly, he explained it to her that the kids they had seen were part of an educational program, and that they had exited the boat with a guide and had been escorted into the botany lab that exists on the ride. I approached the cast member myself then, and advised her refrain from speaking of the incident or asking any further questions, so as not to spread fake news. Then Alan escorted her to a nearby security office to be debriefed and to sign a few forms. A new cast member, unaware of the details of the incident, arrived shortly afterwards to replace the one who had made the report. At that point, my curious nature had gotten the better of me, and I approached the cast member telling him I needed him to put some space between the next 2 boats, as I would be searching for a lost wedding ring. He bought my explanation, and a few moments later, I caught the next boat and entered the ride, alone. Now, for those unfamiliar with the ride, Living with the Land is boring and not particularly popular, so the fact that kids had been alone on the ride at the time of their disappearance was not surprising. It was also the reason I was certain no one would see what I was about to do. A few minutes into the ride, I came to the part of it which features a realistic prairie farmhouse. I don't know what it is about the scene, but no matter how many times I've seen it for myself, something about it just never sat right with me. In any event, as I had done hundreds of times before on rides, I jumped off the boat and into the set where the house was located. That's when I noticed something unusual. There were no pressure mats, and the boat drifted away. A solid 30 seconds passed before the next boat arrived at the scene. Until that point, I had never seen a ride with its pressure mats disabled. For the unaware, the mats are used to detect if and when anyone disembarks a ride. I shrugged it off, and slowly I started to walk up to the house. Climbing the steps up to the porch, I noticed a small emblem on the left window. A small square and compass, which I immediately recognized as a Masonic symbol. Interesting, I thought, that it had been hidden there, of all places. I figured whoever built the ride was a Freemason, and brushed it off. I looked in the windows of the house and saw that there was nothing but curtains with black plywood behind them. Seemed as though there was nothing to see, but something deep inside me encouraged me to keep looking. The front door glided open to a bright room with a black and white checkerboard floor. There was a marble, altar-like table on the opposite end of the room with some kind of weird throne-like chair built into the front of it and a golden cup atop the table. The only other thing of note was a heavy wooden door on the other end of the room. There were no windows. The sight was beyond strange. I'd always been under the impression that the house was fake. Again, I was overwhelmed with curiosity. Against my better judgment, I tried the door in the room. Not surprisingly, it was locked. Refusing to take no for an answer, however, I tried my keys, but none of them worked. Here's the thing. At Disney, we use a lock system called BEST, which utilizes interchangeable cores, which have assigned numbers or letters, or a combination of them. This allows us to limit access to certain areas. I have the general master key, which is, essentially, an honest-to-God key to the kingdom. The interesting thing about this lock was that my master didn't open it. I inspected the lock more closely. Sure enough, it was a BEST lock. However, the inscription on it read CC, which I'd never seen before. Having hit a dead end, I turned to leave. On my way out, I noticed a fast pass for another attraction, Soarin', lying on the ground. I picked it up and pocketed it. It's amazing how trash works its way into odd places, I thought. I was determined to figure out where the kids went. I rode the boat back out to the platform and went back to the Epcot security office to replay some footage from the DVR. It took a while, but I was able to zero in on the exact moment when the missing kids had entered the Land and Sea Pavilion and followed them. There were 4 of them total, 3 girls and a boy, and a 5th person, a man, escorting them through the building. I watched as the group lumbered through the pavilion in a straight line. The girls' actions were unusually robotic. Simply watching them sent a chill up my spine. What frightened me the most, however, was their unidentified male escort. I paused and looked closer when I realized the man, like me, was outfitted in a black polo and khakis. Holy shit, I thought, realizing I recognized him. It was my colleague, Alan, the guy that arrived at the scene before I did. The same guy who fed the cast member at the control podium BS about the kids going on a tour. For a moment, I thought maybe he had actually sent them on the tour of the Botanic Lab and lost track of them. Until I hit play on the film. On the screen, I watched as the boy refused to walk in line. I could tell he was giving Alan problems. He kept venturing away and getting distracted by various things in the pavilion. Until then, I'd given Alan the benefit of the doubt. That changed, however, when I saw the kid press the button for the fast pass on Soarin' and retrieve the paper like it was some sort of prize. Alan tugged the boy away and stood back, observing the other kids as they made their way to living with the land. I saw everyone get on the boat. They remained visible throughout the storm scene, through the rainforest scene, then through the desert scene. After the desert, I lost sight of the boat. I noticed then, as verified from the other scenes, that the ride had stopped momentarily. Once it resumed, I saw the boat reemerge in the scene with pictures of farmers. It was empty. I also saw Alan looking down from the observation deck, which explains how he had been able to respond so quickly. I switched the cameras back to live view and left the area. Now, I haven't been exactly honest with you thus far. I know about a lot of things Disney does, about things that my team responds to, which a regular security officer wouldn't deal with. I've witnessed eugenics experiments, pharmaceutical engineering, even experiments with gas. Have you ever noticed that on both Spaceship Earth and the monorail, that you get a strange, calm feeling on those rides? Well, they're pumping low doses of laughing gas in those areas. Ever heard of Room Zero? They were wearing gas masks for a reason. Ever hear of gascots? Well, that's not important right now. But I would encourage you to research it. I know I'm the bad guy. I never thought that what we did by containing these dark secrets was okay, but the job paid well, and so I kept my mouth shut when I witnessed guests being injected with experimental drugs and released, after which point it was our job to monitor and contain them if things got out of control. All things considered, what I saw the day of the kid's disappearance wasn't procedural. It wasn't normal, relatively speaking. So the first thing I did was go over to the room where we kept the keys. I looked through the logbooks for the core labeled CC. I found it, but it had no zone or specific location issued to the core, and the number of copies was marked as 1. The key was in our system, but my master key didn't open it. So I grabbed the core key and a few Zone 1 cores. The core key is a specific key that, when inserted into the lock, removes the core so it can be replaced with another. I put it in my pocket and made a beeline for the land and sea pavilion. I might have been paranoid, but I swear I saw Alan following me in the shadows. I got to the ride and made my way to the house and back to the front door leading to the Masonic room, and locked the front door as I entered. I inserted the core key into the lock on the wooden door, removed the core, and inserted the Zone 1 core back into the lock. Now my master key would open the door, and boy did it ever work like a charm. The door glided open. It was heavy, with steel opposite its wood face. On the other side of the door, I discovered a red velvet staircase leading down to some kind of utilidor. For the unacquainted, the utilidors are short for utility corridors. They're part of the backstage area in Disney's theme parks, and their purpose is to allow cast members to perform park support operations such as trash removal out of the sight of guests so as to avoid ruining the illusions of perfection the company tries so hard to create. What the hell, I thought. We were in Epcot. There was one small utilidor in Epcot, but it didn't go that deep. Slowly I descended the stairs and walked down the red-carpeted hallway to a pair of double doors. Behind those doors was the answer I'd been searching for. The truth of what happened to the kids. Behind those doors was the darkest side of Disney, a side that even I couldn't believe. Would Walt be in favor of what I'd seen? Or was it one of Eisner's ideas, intended to make money off his guests? Behind these doors was a dimly lit room, carpeted with the same lush red velvet I'd seen in the hallway. The room was empty, with the exception of a small circular platform positioned in the center, surrounded by 6 leather armchairs, each with their own telephone and a card reader on a small table beside them. Inside, I knew what was going on. I knew what was happening here. This is one thing I will not cover up for the Disney Corp. I stood there in disbelief and horror and noticed a small door towards the back of the room. I went over and popped out the CC core, put it in my pocket, and put in a Zone 1 core. That's when I heard someone clear their throat from the front of the room. It was Alan, armed with a gun which he had trained on me. He had a look of annoyance on his face. I slowly propped the door open on the latch and turned to face him. "You never should have come here," he said as he approached me. "So this is what you and your scumbag friends resorted to," I retorted. "We did some pretty fucked up shit, Alan, but this is a new low for you and your disgusting friends." I had my hand at my side and blocked the view of me slipping the Zone 1 core out of the handle and into my pocket. "It's not going to matter, because no one is going to find out." Alan raised the gun and, like something out of an action movie, I ripped the door open as he pulled the trigger. I jumped backwards through the doorway and shut it behind me just in time to hear the bullet ping off the steel. I had both cores in my pocket, so I knew there was no way Alan could open the door. He was stuck. Realizing his predicament, he started shooting the door. Meanwhile, I moved forward, walking down a hallway with small cell-like rooms lining the corridor. Inside, I could see play school chairs and a few toys. I checked every single one of them, and they were all empty. I reached the end of the hall and came upon a huge metal vault-like door. I popped the last Zone 1 core into the door to replace the CC core and pulled the steel door open, and was promptly blinded by sunlight. I found myself outside alongside some utility road off premises of Epcot leading off into the distance. I was too late. The kids were already gone for good. I called the police, but they never came. I called the FBI, but they never took me seriously. Hell, I even called the CIA, but they said they didn't deal with domestic issues like that and referred me back to the FBI. I showed up at the Orange County Police Department's headquarters and they took a report, but I heard something fall in the trash while I was leaving. If you go to a Disney park, please keep your kids close. Watch out for the men in the black polos. They may be monitoring you. They may be responding to something that will put you in danger. As far as I know, they aren't the ones that pick out the merchandise. I don't know who does that, but that doesn't really matter. Disney is good at what they do. They are good at keeping secrets, and they are good at controlling any outside force that attempts to bring their secrets to light. I am lucky I saw the sunlight again, and I am lucky to have had time to leave the state before they got to me. Not everyone is so lucky.
Chilling tales for dark nights.